Good afternoon. My name is Velma Latson, and I am from Bowie State University, and I'm going to give a brief discussion on the impact of MOOC blended instruction to teach programming. The outline of the presentation will be, first, I'm going to give a brief introduction and background of the study, then a description of the actual study that was conducted, a synopsis of the course that was used in the research study, some data that was collected, challenges that were brought up during the course of the research study, some of the best practices that we implemented at Bowie State University for the study, and what I've actually come up with was what I believe is mastering blended instruction. Some things that I saw and recognized and that emerged from the research that I've kind of put together, and hopefully we'll have time to do a group activity. So Bowie State University is the oldest historically black college and university in Maryland. It is also one of the 10 oldest historically black colleges and universities in the nation. I've been teaching at Bowie State University for about 14, 15 years now. I have a background in computer science, programming. I have a background in information systems, information technology, and also instructional design. So I am also the course coordinator for the course that we're going to be talking about this afternoon, and I am also the computer technology coordinator for our computer technology program at Bowie State University. And our computer technology program is housed in the computer science department. So we all have merging disciplines in that particular program. Bowie State has about 5,000 students. We're a small university. We sit between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland, and our students have a great opportunity to do internships and research opportunities for the federal government. We have industry partners, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Booz Allen. So a lot of our undergraduates have a lot of opportunities in that area. The background of the study was part of my piece was part of a larger research study that was conducted by the University System of Maryland and Ithaca Gates. And what they were doing was looking at different various interactive platforms to be used in traditional university settings, lecturing settings. And so this was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Bowie was actually one of 10 universities that actually participated in this larger study. So what I'm going to be talking about today is just my small piece of the larger study that was conducted during this time. So the course that we chose to use at Bowie State University was a course called Computing Tools and Technologies, COSC 111. It's a general education course for non-STEM majors. Two reasons: I am the course designer. I came up with the concept. I proposed the course in its infancy. And one reason was we have two general education courses. One is Computer Science 110, which is basically Word, Excel, that type of thing. And so with conversation across our campus, they wanted a little bit more rigorous computer science course. So that's the concept of 111. And so part of 111, COSC 111, includes the 6 modules there. Programming, HTML, they learn a little bit of hardware, operating system, networking, and we definitely talk about security in that course. It's also a recruiter course. We try to have students know that computer science, STEM disciplines are not threatening. So we try to make it an engaging course to try to recruit students to our program. So the MOOC that we used in this was from Coursera, Introduction to Interactive Programming in Python, which was created by Rice University. And it's an 8-week MOOC. So the module consisted of the 8 weeks that we used in the course. And it was a pretty good MOOC, so we're going to go ahead and talk about that part. The design of the instruction was blended. So we had the MOOC. We also used face-to-face components, and then we had our own on-campus learning management system, Blackboard. And so part of the research, we had 4 treatment sessions that had 3 faculty. One faculty person taught 2 sections, And then our control group, 5, and again, 1 faculty person taught 2 courses. We had approximately 200 students total, 100 in each group of participants. The team and who I directly worked along with, myself, the course coordinator, I worked along with the instructional designer, the person that was over Bowie's Blackboard learning management system. She worked along with me. We worked along with a Coursera representative who helped us use the tools, who gave me access to the tools prior to the fall semester being conducted so I can review the MOOC, understand what was going on in the MOOC. We had full-time faculty, adjunct, and peer tutors that was a part of this, and the discussion throughout was always a conversation with everyone involved. I did not teach any of the sections whatsoever. I coordinated the effort. I designed the course for all the instructors to use in the traditional course as well as the MOOC, treatment course, but we were always in constant communication throughout the 8-week module. And actually the 8 weeks ran through our midterm. So it worked out really well because the data that we collected was up to midterm. So just some of the student habits that we found out during the research, and you can see it's pretty much even across the board. There was really no differences in that. They asked for help. Some in both sections did not complete the work as assigned. There were some difficulties. So there was really no differences in some of the student habits in both groups. The MOOC itself, again, it was mid-range in most of the cross mid-range, confusing to have different instructors. So that was some of the students saying, they come face-to-face, but then they had to look at the MOOCs in order for the instruction, so some of them thought that was a bit confusing. Some believed it was a little bit difficult to follow, but across the board, the mean was pretty even on ranges of 1 through 5. I like this made course more enjoyable than face-to-face. So, yeah, there's one. So here for the midterm grades alone, we had it was across the board. There was really no significant differences between the traditional courses and those that were offered in the MOOC. The mean was 70%, both for pass rates at the time of midterm. And the reason that's significant is because that's when students have the opportunity to drop a class. So they can withdraw, drop a class. So we just kept that data. And then we also, what was the midterm grade? So when it says final here, it's just we're talking about what was their midterm grade at that point. Because after that, they were great. We were like, you don't even have to look at programming ever again in life. You don't have to worry about understanding Python. So they were really happy with that. So now some of the challenges that we had was using both the MOOC and the Blackboard learning management system. Our university has their own internal controls, so they wanted to make sure that we made use of their learning management system. They were not in favor of a single sign-on solution for the students. We wanted to know if we could have that capability. They said no. So we had to ask Coursera to give us separate logins for over 100 students so that we can have access to their content, and then the students also had to log into their own separate account, for our learning management system. So it was a bit challenging. Access to the MOOC, I think that was more a challenge for myself and some of the faculty. Coursera allowed us to have a canned MOOC in which I believe they may have copied the actual MOOC for us because our students were not a part of the larger population. We had our own unique private MOOC at that point. Excuse me. And so I believe part of the challenges was setting up assignments correctly, the weekly quizzes, not being really familiar with the Coursera format. We did have a rep that was there to help us through it, but one challenge, and I want to bring this out, is that it's a general education course. So during the fall enrollment, if you have an influx of freshmen, the advisement center say, can you offer more sections of this course? And then faculty may not have met their FTEs for, some of their courses were dropped. So right up until the beginning of the semester, we were changing faculty. Faculty were bumping some adjuncts out, and taking over. So it was really a problem with faculty development and understanding the whole concept of the MOOC at that time. So that was challenging. And then we did have a textbook, and yet the Python programming was a little bit different than that offered in the Coursera MOOC. The students and the faculty enjoyed the environment, because it was a web-based environment for the Python programming, and both the faculty and the students enjoyed that. So they were able to write the code right into a browser, and that was really good. I think it was called Code Sculptor. So now some of the best practices that we did implement through this, because we knew it was a large cohort of students, we tried to keep them together as much as possible. So we arranged through the advisement that they took their freshman seminar course together along with this general education course together. So we tried to do that. That allowed for the students to help each other, because they were seeing each other before they would actually go to the class, so they had their own peer tutoring going on at that time. Then we also had mandatory tutoring that was a part of it, and the peer tutors were always available throughout the week in case they were not able to get in touch with their own faculty members during that time. So we were able to have that, and then we also offered supplemental instructional tools, Khan Academy and the like. So this is what I believe will create successful blended instruction. Now, this is just something I was bouncing around with, that it definitely has to be sound instructional design for the course. We all agree with that. And then student readiness, and there are many check sheets and things that go out about our students prepared for an online environment. But I also think faculty readiness is becoming really key into a successful blended instructional environment. So, and what I'm saying is, we have faculty on our campus that may not be favorable for using MOOCs, but yet because that's the environment that our administration is leaning towards, then how is it that we make that faculty ready to use that type of instructional tool in the classroom? So faculty readiness is really key. Because of my background in instructional technology, I enjoy the tools. I'm excited about what we can do with the tools to help in education, but not everyone feels that way. So, at this point, are there any questions? I will open the floor for anyone who may have some questions. You have to use the mic. Thank you. And I'm sorry, and I would just like to recognize Dr. Jackson, who actually helped me with, she's also a Bowie State colleague who helped me with the research and some of the activities, so I'm giving it.
Props, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm Sash Thackberry. I'm from Cuyahoga Community College, and I just had a couple questions about your research design. First of all, I'm thrilled that you had a control group, which we so rarely do in educational research. Did all of your interventions, including the cohort, the mandatory tutoring, that kind of thing, were those only for the treatment group, or were those also available for the control group?
They were available for all the students.
For all the students.
All the
so
students.
The only difference you were looking at was the MOOC.
Only the MOOC.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank
only
you.
The MOOC. And the freshman seminar course was huge. It was pretty big. But the only reason not all of them were able to get in that one freshman section, because some of the gen ed, they're non-majors, for one, and so some of other majors may have their own freshman seminar courses, like the nursing will have their own freshman seminar courses, and some of the natural sciences, they have their own freshman seminar course. So as much as we could, we tried to keep them all together in a cohort.
What was the reasoning behind keeping them sort of separate from the other MOOC? So you said that they were in their own little self-contained.
No. Let me explain.
Yeah.
Coursera gave us a shell. So yeah, Coursera offered the course, I believe, as a regular MOOC, but the course that we used was not the same one that the rest of the world was using. So that was a choice of Coursera. It wasn't our choice.
So were your students able to benefit from the global, were they on forums with the other
No.
Coursera? So this was, okay.
Yeah. That is interesting, yeah.
So Dan Garcia, UC Berkeley. So we're trying to build a MOOC for high schools in a blended way, and so I'm really excited by this work. You said your students are non-majors.
Yeah.
How many of them struggled with typing, or struggled with we're looking at a blocks-based approach rather than a typing, rather than a Python style. It's another language that's a blocks-driven. We argue that for students who it's hard to type fast and they're point and click, as I was for a certain time, the blocks model might be better. Did you hear it all from this sense? Two questions. One is, did you hear it all from your students that just learning the text-based language was difficult? Just overall, that's kind of blocks versus text, not less about the MOOCs. And answer that one, and I'll wait for the second one.
Well, unfortunately, I did not teach the sections. So I was relying mostly on the faculty that was actually teaching the section. And when that question never came up about whether or not they had difficulties with the actual typing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because, I mean, my kids, it's amazing. Like, I had to learn in Hunt and Pack, and then when I was in like 8th grade, I took typing on an actual typewriter. My kids can type circles around me, and I'm pretty fast now because they're so used to growing up with devices. I wouldn't think it would be hard for high school students to type.
Sorry, counterpoint. I think it really depends on your student population, because we have a student population that does not really, across the board, have access to what you would consider to be a personal computer or even a laptop. We have a lot of students that their only computing power that they own comes from a smartphone, so they have to go to a library or something like that. And we have seen significant challenges with typing.
Okay. Yeah, but that never came up with.
My second question was about faculty readiness. So can you dig a little deeper to that? What, as we're going forward and working with high school teachers now, and there's a huge range, I mentioned this in an earlier section, a huge range in their background in computer science. We have some people coming in from art, some people who have masters in CS, and there's a huge range between them.
Yeah.
Tell me what it's not just I'm ready and I'm prepared and I've bought into it, but all of your faculty have the content knowledge, but some of ours don't. So we have the buy-in, but not the content knowledge. You have the content knowledge, not the buy-in. So tell me what do you mean by readiness and more than just the buy-in?
Well, I believe that they have to marry. I believe the content experts have to understand the educational part of it and vice versa. So, and I believe in higher education, most instructors are not I'm just trying to figure out how to say it delicately because I'm on the fence with both of that. But, and I believe that the faculty has to be familiar with the content, familiar with the technology, familiar with the learning environment. I mean, it has to be a complete piece for the faculty. And I believe that there's disconnect. So part of the activity that I hope we get to will address that very thing. So I'm hoping that you all can help me with that piece too, because we have many check sheets on student preparedness, time management, all these other things, but I haven't found very much out there for faculty readiness to do this type of thing. So I'm hoping you can help me with this. Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm Ursula Wolz, and Dan, the answer is, of course, syntax-free languages are better.
Okay.
And by the way, it's not just anecdotal. I mean, the point is not so much whether they can type or not, but whether the drag and drop environment is and purely anecdotal. And Dan hasn't heard this story either. I spent a week working with AIM High students in New Jersey. These are our elite inner city kids who are spending 3 weeks on a campus in order to understand what college is about. In 4 days, they did App Inventor apps, despite the fact that the IT staff didn't put the right software on the machines on the first day.
They're sharp.
It's very doable. Is there definitive research on this stuff? Hell no, because that's not what NSF is funding right now. I hope somebody's listening. But there's some.
Right.
Please say it again, that it's teacher preparedness. What I've heard over the last 2 days here is not about the MOOCs somehow replacing all of us who have been in the trenches. Right. I'm not at a community college, but I've taught at 2 middle-tier, first-generation American colleges over the last 2 years, and it's a very different world from Harvard and MIT. Yeah. And you're successful if there are prepared teachers willing to really engage personally with kids, or students or adults who happen to be in your classroom.
Yeah.
And nothing works if all you do is sit at the front of the
Right.
room and read the textbook or
Right.
have them go home and do the MOOC.
Right.
So if we can jumpstart this focus on not a MOOC classroom, but a MOOC-supported classroom, that will be a big difference. I'd also
Yeah.
challenge the researchers who were in the room, the MOOC researchers in the room, to really start asking the question about how does the face-to-face peer interaction support classroom learning? Okay, that's a big one for me. I participated in a MOOC, and the forum was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was really cool. I learned volumes about online interaction, but this did
Yeah.
not compare to the hour and a half my students and I, a bunch of us took the
Right.
MOOC together, that we put in face-to-face.
Right. I agree. I think this gentleman.
No, she said what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Oh, another question here. We have one more question here in the front. Oh, I didn't see. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was curious about the student readiness process and the faculty readiness process and how they're connected and sort of what you learned from that and how readiness is measured.
Well, actually, that's what I hope we can do. That's what I hope we can accomplish today, only on one aspect. We don't have enough time. I wish we had enough time to tackle all of it. But I really want us to look at faculty readiness. I believe the student readiness part has been discussed somewhat in some of the workshops. How much background knowledge does the student bring into the classroom? Are they familiar with technology? Have they had some experiences with online environments before? So, and there are several check sheets. I know at our university, before a student can participate in any online environment, they have to go through an orientation and the like. But our faculty really don't have to do that. Our faculty really don't have to go through that preparedness. So I'm hoping that we can address that faculty readiness in one of the activities that I have.
Two quick things. One, to student readiness, we have a tool that we built that has students, and I realize this is really
Yeah,
simple,
that's fine.
self-rank, like their ability to do certain things, and then it recommends certain mini modules for them. And I can send you that afterwards. But it's kind of cool, but
That'd
it
be
really
great.
relies on students like knowing about their own technology skills, which they're not really all the time good
Yeah,
at
that's true.
assessing themselves. But the other question I wanted to ask, and I don't know if maybe this is a group question too, to your point about the synchronous in-class discussion combined with like some sort of MOOC hybrid model, is anybody doing synchronous sessions, like a hybrid model, but not a place-based hybrid model, like a synchronous discussion that's not physically bound?
Kind of.
Okay, because we're not doing
Yeah,
that.
so we have a master's program in geographic information systems that has a capstone course where students have to prepare a presentation that they would give at like a national conference. And they actually have to do that, and their advisor goes to the national conference and watches them. But in preparation for that, part of the course is that they have to give those presentations to their peers in the
Okay.
class and get feedback and have that interaction. Now, these are, the market for most of our programs is working adult professionals, and they're all over the globe. So we've got a
Sure.
setup, so you don't have to go to every student's presentation, because
Sure.
that would be a scheduling nightmare. And they're done at different times of the day to try to, meet. And so they do like 4 or 5 of them in an evening or in
Okay.
an afternoon.
Okay.
And they are very much required to be there live and interact, and they love it.
Yeah.
They seem to really love it. They love that they don't have to go to everybody's
Oh,
too.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I
That's
don't know if
great.
that counts as an example of what you're talking about.
Any other comments? Well, great. I appreciate the comments, but now let's see if we can work through this. Now, I was asked about what my thoughts were about faculty readiness, and I'm hoping that you can help me, because what I found out being a part of this workshop is so many people, we're asking the same questions. We're really asking a lot of the same questions. We're trying to come up with the same, we're looking for the same help, if you would, in order to do this well. So what I'm hoping we can do is come up with some type of rubric, some type of something that, if nothing else, will start the conversation on how do we address this faculty readiness. What is it that the faculty, what should they possess, what type of knowledge should they have about content knowledge, what type of knowledge should they have about MOOCs or learning management systems? Do they need to possess a whole lot of technology skills? Or, do they have to be familiar with mobile apps? Do they have to understand the background knowledge of the students that they're actually trying to interact with? Should they be able to understand where they came from, that type of thing? So is there a rubric that we can use to say this person should be ready, able to move into that? Yes, sure. Oh, there is? Oh, well, yeah, if you could.
So what I would be curious, and I can share this with everyone who's registered, but in the online world, before MOOCs, sorry. I'm at Penn State, and we've been doing online education for a very long time, and so we've gone to great lengths to create rubrics to help faculty assess their readiness. We even have a tool, an online tool where they can kind of score themselves, and it gives them feedback on how to better prepare if they don't feel they're ready. But the rubric has about 30 items on it, and it's divided into pedagogical competencies, technical competencies, and administrative competencies. Yeah. And I haven't really looked at it with thinking of specifically of a MOOC, but having done online education since 1998, I can tell you, not much is going to be different. So I wonder what would be specific to the MOOC world.
Right. And I guess my thinking is from the university setting that I come from. We don't have a large online component yet. I'm sure some of your larger institutions may have an entire department or something that's dedicated to this, but normally those persons who are in that faculty member wants to be there. They want to be a part, okay, so that's, maybe not, but I know we have a hard time on our campus trying to help people buy into this online environment. And if they're being force-fed, and see, the problem is if they're being force-fed to do this and they're not prepared to do this, then the students hate the course. Then it's a bad reputation across campus about the course when actually it was just the faculty just was not prepared or was not ready to do that.
Yeah, similarly at Stony Brook, we keep having these discussions about how do you make faculty interested in this. I'm like, we can't even support the faculty who actually are interested in this. Yeah. So maybe we can table that discussion for like 10 years down the road.
Well, and just in my small college within the Penn State University, we have 120 online courses, which sounds like we'd have a lot of faculty involved, and that is, but we've got a lot more who...
Yeah.
And I always say to department heads, please don't give me someone who doesn't want to do this, because they try to.
Yeah.
And they're the worst to work with.
Well, then I think that goes back to the presenter earlier who said if there's a lot of research out there, share it, because I'm really, and that's perfect. But I would love for us to kind of sit down, if we still could kind of come up with a baseline, midline availability or some type of content that way. And you could just jot down any ideas that you may have about that or where they are, because it may be of interest to you at your high schoolers. I mean, where are they, and what type of readiness do they need to have in your content knowledge for it to be successful? So if you're saying they have none.
Some have none.
So
what's interesting, I'd like everybody to cross out the word faculty to say teacher, because that covers the general space. But the other piece of it is, I feel like, the phrase, the spirit is willing but the flesh is weak, I kind of look at this as, this is useful. These rubrics are useful not to determine who comes in the door and who doesn't, but for those who do come in the door, it's a checklist. Yeah. Here are the things that we kind of think it takes to be really good, and you're coming in because you want to be here. You might want to brush up on your technology skills,
Yeah.
how to do scripting of the blah, 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 because that might be needed at week 17.
Yeah.
So that's a useful thing to do here. Now they're ready. Okay, I've gone through the boot camp of the technology skills piece of
Yeah.
it. I feel like I've got all green lights.
Yeah.
Let's move ahead to use the...
And I think there's a question in the back.
No, I'm done.
What I did not include in my pyramid was the fact that it would be unique to each institution too. It would be something, for instance, what happens at Bowie State definitely may not be what's appropriate for someone else, but at least it would give us a baseline to begin that conversation with faculty readiness stuff.
I think this is wonderful, but I also want to caution about having sort of an entry checklist. And this is, I will do my elevator version of it.
Sure.
In December, 600 students at the Mount Hebron Middle School in Montclair, New Jersey, engaged in meaningful computer science activities through the CS Week Code.org event. We had 30 teachers involved. Their professional development in understanding how to run Snap, which is what Dan works with, and the Finch robots from Bird Brain Technologies occurred the day before we set the kids loose.
Yeah.
Okay, if we had invited
right.
teachers in based on, are you ready for this? We would have had no teachers,
Yeah.
including the very gifted game development and Scratch teacher,
True.
the technology teacher, because she was overwhelmed and she had too much on her plate. And everybody else was like, Common Core, standards, test. So I would, especially Dan at the high school level, I would use this with great caution. The most exciting teachers I've had working with Scratch and Snap and now App Inventor have not been the math technology teachers. English teacher, music teacher,
Yeah.
dance teacher, special education teachers. Okay, routinely, and not because the math people aren't interested or don't have the skills for it. They've got a very different agenda, and bringing computing into the high school and in the middle school has had more to do with finding people who want to use it to enhance what they're teaching. So I'd caution all of you to do this very, very gently.
Oh, sure. Down, and then here.
So, can you bring up the slide that had the graph and the motivation was the center bar that was the highest? Yeah. I think there's a meta point here. I think that's useful for us to, yeah, that one, okay? So hard to stay motivated is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So I think if you're gonna have not a checklist, but kind of, I would have in your first minute of any welcome to MOOC is, this stuff is hard, we're gonna be excited, you're gonna be engaged, you're gonna learn a lot, but there are gonna be times when you are gonna hit a wall, you're gonna feel like you wanna give up, and to all the folks who normally drop out, we want you to stay with it. When you get to exactly that minute that we're predicting now is gonna happen to you, when that happens, I want you to say, it finally happened. It may happen in the first 5 minutes, it may happen 10 weeks from now, but it's gonna happen to you, and we want you to stay with it. So the kind of the grit, I think, is a meta piece to it, right? So that's the central bar, hard to stay motivated. That's one of the keys. You got an engaging and like all the presenters you've seen are so engaging. I want to take classes from all of you folks.
Right.
That doesn't happen if you're limited to a one by one video, and you lose so much of the dynamics of the interpersonal hand on my shoulder kind of situation that lets you keep motivated. So I think not just we need to tell our students this, but I think there's some meta, now you go to the last slide, there's some meta things about what you want from, and I'm with you that I'm not saying there's a bar. I never said that there's a bar. You have to be green lights on all 10 dimensions before you can be part of the blended space.
Right.
But there might be the first, if you're having some PD, you said you had some PD for teachers before you launched them on it. There might be some things you add to the PD.
Yeah.
One of them is, this stuff is going to break. So let's just know that stuff's going to break. That little one sentence, like, just bear with us as this is new stuff and it's not going to be easy and blah, blah. Like, there's a little bit of resilience that the instructor has to be able to work with and say, just bear with us.
Yeah.
Just saying bear with us isn't on that list.
Yeah.
There's some meta things that even are more important. I think the grit, we may find out 10 years from now that grit is more important than background, that getting the A in this. It is that when you get stuck, do you have a fixed mindset, well, I got stuck, that must mean I'm dumb, I'm going to give up? Or Dweck's might be right all along, that I'm going to dig deep and figure out why did I mess that question up and do some background reading, maybe 10 Wikipedia pages and a book here, and finally I come back to that. Now I can answer the question. Let's move on.
Yeah.
You want that student. That might be the most important thing that students need to have in successful life. What are some of the things that are listed that might be the most successful thing, most important things for a blended instructor, teacher? May not be on this list.
Yeah,
it may
that's
be
true. That's
that you
right.
can handle the fact that
That's right.
you're out of your element
That's
and
right.
you're this and you don't have all the
That's
check boxes. They're not all green. There's some yellow, there's some red.
Right.
Yet I'm still going to persevere
Right.
and I'm still going to make this the best experience for my
Right.
kids. And when the MOOC delivered material is bad or too over our heads, we stop.
Right.
The ability, like where on this list is the ability to know this is too hard for my kids.
Right.
I need to stop it, pull the plug. Let's all do an exercise, get up and stretch it. None of that. So I think
Yeah,
we need to
you're
kind of be
right.
thinking about the meta things that are even more important
Yeah, that's
than
good.
the formal things.
That's good.
I guess I have one thing to say also. The rubric, we can look at it from the other side of it. When the teachers come in, like you say, they have so much to do, and I've taught in the high schools as well, you could use it as a way to understand what their difficulty may be. It's not really to exclude anybody from the activity, but what is going to be their frustration level? Because if there's time for professional development, you have time to do it versus throwing them in and say, well, I didn't know you didn't know programming. I didn't know you didn't understand Blackboard. Now you do. So you could use it that way. It's not to deter anybody. It's to make this whole environment much more easier for everybody along. Because if you're not comfortable, it's going to be very hard to make the students comfortable as well.
Yeah. Very true.
I just wanted to build on what you were saying about, the meta skills. We do a ton of professional development for our faculty. They don't all take us up on it. But if they're being hired only for the purpose of teaching online, then we do make them do it. And I can tell you over and over again, it comes back to good teaching is good teaching.
Right.
And we have many, many decades of research. We know what good teaching is, and it isn't unique to technology. It isn't unique to a delivery environment. And so I actually developed a peer-reviewed tool, a faculty-to-faculty peer-review tool for Penn State's use. It's open, anyone can use it. And it's all built on Chickering and Gamson's 7 principles for effective practice in undergraduate education, because good teaching is good teaching. And so even though I was building this tool about peer evaluation of online courses, that didn't really matter that it was for online.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to keep reminding ourselves of that. The most incredible teachers in the only face-to-face classroom can make that translate very well to online. The ones who are just really good show people, but really aren't good teachers, they don't engage with their students, are awful online. Because they're the ones who, the minute the bell rings, they're out of there, and they're avoiding their students. But the people that I've met at this conference aren't those kind of teachers. You can hear people saying, earlier today, one of the presenters said, I run into my students in the coffee shop and we talk. Those are the really great teachers. You put them in any environment and they'll be great.
Yeah.
I actually have something for both of those two things, which is I wrote down effective characteristics is the first thing for my tentative rubric before you even said anything. So, and then I thought it was really interesting what you just said about good teaching is good teaching, because I think the single most thing about online that we're not explicit about is that it's an unforgiving medium, and you can't do it on the fly, and you can't make it up as you go along. It's a lot harder to fake it online.
Yeah,
And so
that's
I think making things specific and explicit, and then that process of creating the faculty readiness, maybe if it's not there, brings it back into the classroom. So I think that a really well-designed online experience in a MOOC can really inform future classroom-based instruction, and that can be part of this faculty feedback loop, because you can't just, you have to be able to say, okay, we've had this technical issue, we're gonna come on, or this is really difficult content, let's adjust as we go. Being flexible, I think, is really key. But if you have an unprepared course, it is gonna crater.
Yeah.
And I think that's you can kind of fake it more in person. Still, no one will be calling you a brilliant instructor, but you can kind of muddle through. You can't muddle through online.
That's true.
So the other thing, I taught a MOOC, Mike Shadell, Stony Brook, and found out later that a technical high school in Queens used the MOOC for their class. And something that I wish had happened is that that instructor had actually reached out to me and been like, hey, we're using your class for this. I would have like driven to Queens and like popped in and be like, hey.
Yeah.
To not think,
Yeah,
like
right.
worship me.
Yeah.
So not to think that it's just a one-way trickle-down thing, but if you, I'm like, there's a quiz the first week. How do you get in touch with your instructor? You do not find them on Facebook and friend them and then ask them questions. But if it is a whole high school class that's doing it, it would be great to know how they're doing and highlight that. So to also have the conversation going both ways.
Right, right. In the back.
So inspired off of some of the things in the front about, what do we want to put on it? And I'll give you my, you need to take these home, yeah. From this conversation, these are, I was a department chair, so, and there was a point where I had 13 adjuncts and 3 full-time faculty and all of that, so I've been there. To make it successful, regardless of whether it's a MOOC or not, the ability to give up control.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's huge. That's huge.
I actually take exception to the preparedness because I think that you have to be over prepared when you're using technology because it will break.
That's right.
You will tap dance.
Yeah.
And if you're foolish enough not to walk into any classroom situation
agree.
without chalk or whiteboard markers in your pocket,
I agree.
you're not prepared.
I
Okay,
agree.
so that's number 3 is chalk or whiteboard markers in your pocket.
Yeah.
And then the one that I love best and the one that they write on my student evaluation forms is, she says, I don't know, let's go find out.
Right.
Okay, if you can't do that, you can't,
Right.
you can't teach with
I agree.
technology because you're going to be surprised.
I agree. And I think part of the faculty teacher readiness is it requires faculty to do a self-evaluation too. It requires them to do some reflecting to say, I don't want to be prepared. Most of us don't want a student to see us unprepared. Most faculty are not willing to relinquish control of the classroom. So I think that's part of all of that that's going on too. Great comments. Any other questions or anything? Anybody want to share something else that they may have put on a piece of paper or? Yes. Or some of your experiences with your check sheet. That'd be fine.
I just wrote down some URLs
Okay.
that if anyone
Perfect.
would find these helpful, because again, we're really into sharing.
Perfect.
And I expect to get from others. That competencies for online teaching that might be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
We also have developed 3 sets of hiring guidelines that we give to department heads and administrators. One that says, and this is all in addition to content expertise, here's what you should look for when selecting someone to author an online course. One that says, in addition to content expertise, here's what you should look for when you're hiring someone to teach an online course. And then the third one, which may or may not relate to your needs, here's what you should look for when selecting someone to oversee an online program.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've got
That's
those
good.
if that's of interest. And then colleagues of mine at Penn State developed that actual self-assessment tool where you go in as an individual faculty member and you say, yeah, this and yeah, and that, and, click, 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 click. And it brings back to you a report that says, okay, here's some things you might want to think about. Here's some resources. And in our case, I believe they point specifically to
That's great.
people and online
That's
things
great.
for our faculty. So.
That's great.
If anyone wants that.
Sure. Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you. I think we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but I appreciate your time and thank you.